Alright, so we just needed to show you a bit more to prepare you for Project 1. In some cases you may scan multiple photos, and then we also want to just talk a bit more about resolution and make sure that you are confirming the resolution is correct. And we'll show you what happens if it's not correct, and if you make any of these shortcuts in terms of resolution, it will be a problem. So I'm actually going to crop this image. So if you happen to scan in a lot of images when you scan versus doing them separately, you are able to go in and just basically crop the image and then save them individually one by one as needed. For the sake of this, I'm just going to go ahead and crop that real quick. And so that would be the approach I would suggest taking. Remember, you don't want to change any of these image settings up here. We have started a brand new document. This document is, just to confirm, 8 by 10, 300 dpi. You want to make certain that your new document is that exact size, otherwise the output may not be correct and you might have problems. So in this case, this is a, let me show you this image. It is a 4-inch image that is 300 dpi, which that's the output that you needed for the project, but because this image is so much smaller, that's probably not going to be an adequate quality. And then we've got another scan here, and this scan is actually 1200 dpi, so it's about the same size, and so the difference is there's more pixels per inch, so it's going to have a better quality. So let's see what happens. We're going to take our move tool and we're going to go ahead and copy this over. So I'm just clicking and dragging, and I do not let go until I get to this document. So you hover the tab and then you hover the document, and as you can see, the image is not a big enough size. Now, it is going to be important that you also understand how to use free transform, and we've shared a few resources on how to use the option to free transform, but we're just going to show you. Command T is going to allow you to rotate. It will also allow you to do things like resize, and a lot of other things. There's some cool perspective stuff, and you can skew images, and but for the sake of now, we just need to know how to resize and how to rotate our image so it's the correct perspective and angle that we need it. So it's straightened now, we're pretty close to straight, and we now need to see that, as you can see right here, this image is not the right size. It's way too small. If we tried to increase the size of this, this would actually decrease the quality, which we'll show you in a second. Let's go back to our 1200 dpi image, and we'll take those same steps. We've got our move tool. We drag and hover over the tab, and then we wait until we're hovered over top of the document to let go. So now, and let me just go ahead and rename this layer 1200 dpi. Now if we take this and free transform, you're going to notice that it's harder to find the free transform bounding boxes. Sometimes you can scroll a little bit. The nice thing is if you choose Command 0, you're going to be able to zoom all the way out to now control these bounding boxes. So as you rotate, you're going to see degrees. I love that they actually put the numbers on there now. If you hold Shift, it will rotate it in 45 degree increments. Actually, it looks like 15 degree increments. And that will actually help you to make sure that things are getting in the correct position. Now, as you can see, we're going to go ahead and commit to this real quick. If you press return, it commits to your transform. So the image is straight. However, we want to actually scale this image down just a little bit. So Command T again. And if for some reason you cannot find this, it's under the Edit menu, and you'll see it right there, Free Transform. So Photoshop has changed recently, and this is something that if you've been using Photoshop for a while, it'll drive you crazy. However, it's a great new addition once you get used to it. So you can basically come to any side and change the size of whatever your photo is, and it does not distort the image. So it's going to keep it proportionally equal to whatever it was before. Now, before you used to have to hold Shift. However, I'm going to hold Shift for a second and you'll see what happens. it starts to distort. So if you notice that you're distorting your image, you do want to make sure you do not commit to this transformation. So if I pressed return right now, or if I clicked another tool, it's going to like start to commit me to that transformation, which is not what I want to do. So we're going to actually undo that. Command Z is undo. And we are just going to scale it down the way that we need it. Okay. Now you want it to fill as much of your document page as you've got space for. So we've got a little bit of extra here. If you feel as though you can recreate that in Photoshop, then you can actually leave some of that white and then Photoshop the rest of it. So it depends on your skill level. In some cases you may not want to do that. But this now is a nice size image. Okay. You will notice though that this actually has a lot of quality where we're seeing damages, but there's a lot of clarity for how old of a photo this is. So in this case, it'll work perfectly for your project. Obviously you can't improve things where the photo was a little bit blurred from the way that the camera worked. However, we've got this 300 DPI image. And I want to make sure you guys are aware that if we free transform, Photoshop does allow you to make things larger. And I'll just go ahead and purposely make this way larger. We're going to fill the screen, make it the same size. And you can start to see the image quality is degrading. So we're pretty close to the same size. Let's get it almost the same as the other example that we had. A little bit larger. And that's probably close enough. So now if we zoom in, you start to see artifacts and you see all these different degradations of the file. That is going to be way harder for you to retouch, first of all. And second of all, when you print this, it's going to be way lower quality. A lot of the times these things are going to repeat as you start to retouch, and then your image is going to look like a hot mess. So it's going to be really important for you to make sure that you have a high quality scan and that it doesn't look like this. Okay, so you can see that difference, and I just want to make sure you guys can see it is noticeably different. So that is something I am going to be looking for. Even if this image says, watch, it says image size is 300 DPI, I can tell this wasn't scanned properly for it to reach this final output size. So it is very obvious. Now, when you are scaling images, usually people say do not increase the size, and that's because what you just saw in this demonstration. So raster images usually should be used at the size that they're scanned at, or anything smaller than that. Okay, so if you use 1200 DPI and you have lots of extra pixels to work with, then you can actually increase the size of your image because you've scanned at a much higher resolution. However, if you have an image like this one, even though Photoshop lets you do it, the image quality is way worse. So you never want to scan an image up in size from the original size that it started. Okay, and that is something that I want to make sure you guys are mindful of before you start and before you really truly get into retouching your photo. So make sure it's set up properly before we get into the more details of how we retouch.